The first time I met Ismail was at the Indian consulate in New York, outside on the steps. And a documentary of mine called The Sword and the Flute, which I'd made a couple of years earlier, that was being shown at the Indian consulate. It was a film about Indian miniature painting.
Great events of the Mughal dynasty and its importance.
Saeed Jaffrey did the narration. He spoke the narration in that film, and he was a friend of Ismail's. And I'd never met Ismail, but both Madhur and Saeed knew Ismail. And they said, "You must go and see this film. It's very nice. You'll like it." And Jim, you know, he has great feeling about India and Indian art and Indian music. You go and see. So Ismail did come along to see that film, and then he accosted me out on the steps afterwards and introduced himself and suggested that we go and have some coffee. And I said, sure. And so we did. We went to this place on Madison Avenue and went in there. But he had a lot of telephone calls to make, and with other people he needed to talk to. And I remember that he soon ran out of change, and there was a coin phone in there, and this was long before the days of cell phones, and he ended up having to borrow the money from me. And this is our very first meeting, and I recounted this to him. He said, "Nonsense, that never ever happened." But anyway, Ismail at that time was on his way to Cannes, to the Cannes Film Festival, with the film that he had made, and it had both been nominated for an Oscar and was in the official selection at Cannes. It was a short dance film that he had made here in New York, and he was taking that off to Cannes. I had already been to India to make a film for the Asia Society. It was a kind of a portrait of the city of Delhi. And I had shot a lot of it, and I wasn't entirely, I was editing it, but I figured I needed to go back and get some other material. I then went back to India, and while I was there doing that, Ismail, who was going to make a film with some various Indian actors and various people, that film fell through, and we decided to make a film of our own, which was The Householder.
Fine time for sleeping. Get up.
Huh?
Get up.
Oh, I forgot. I have something for you. It's in my pocket. Go and see. It's only a card. Go and see.
It wasn't a book that I had ever read, and I didn't know Ruth Jabwala's fiction because I'd never read one of her novels yet. But he just came up with that idea. So I read the novel, and I liked it. And so the next thing was to convince her, who we didn't know, that we should all work together and so on, which we did. From the beginning, there was always, I didn't know what it really meant, having a partner, because my father had a business partner, but they fought and things of that kind. And I didn't know, maybe that's what lay ahead for me, is that if I had a business partner, I would fight with that person and it would be grief all around. But I just felt, and I was very close to Ismail, and I just felt that he somehow that he had a strength and an energy, and he was like-minded in the things that we wanted to do and the interests and the kinds of films we wanted to make, because he wanted to make films in India in English for an overseas market. And that was something that suited me. I liked that idea. He never wanted to be a director, at least not in those days. He didn't think about that. I mean, he'd produced this film that was nominated for an Oscar, and he was happy being a producer. And in fact, when he left India, on his passport, it had been written, student. That was his designation. But he, in his own handwriting, you'll see on that passport, he scratched that out and wrote film producer. So that was when he was still in college, he did that. Ismail's role was basically to make it possible for, I say us, to make our films. It wasn't because that I wanted particularly to make my film. It became my film, as any director's film becomes his film. But it was to make it was a joint, always a joint effort and a joint sort of piece that he made it possible to do by raising the money, of course, by making all kinds of, forming all sorts of associations with useful people, which could be actors or agents or financiers, whatever, and then by absolutely doggedly hanging on to the film after it had finished, let's say, its commercial release theatrically, and making sure that it just didn't get lost. He somehow won people over. He was so likable, even in his raging moods, even when they were on the receiving end, they didn't seem to mind that much. And it was a long-term thing sometimes. He would start working on somebody, perhaps a possible financier, and he saw someone who had done something, and he made sure that he got to know that person, and then he would invite them to lunch or to come and see a film of ours if we had a film that was just coming out and all this kind of thing. And slowly, he would bring that person into our kind of, I hate to use the word web, but they were sort of drawn in. And when the time was right and when we had something that he thought that person might be able to support financially, he would, increase the pressure, tighten the web, whatever, and it always seemed to work. And sometimes it didn't, but it almost always seemed to work. And then the things that he did to some of his own films were shocking. He once impersonated a Maharaja to get entree into a hotel in France that he wanted to shoot in. And he said that he was the Maharaja of, I don't know where, Jaipur or somewhere, and they believed him. This was at Versailles. And they got the whole crew in up there. How they did that, I don't know. And Jean Moreau, who always, in France, attracts a lot of attention, and they all got up there and they shot these scenes. And then it dawned on the hotel that this was not the Maharaja of Jaipur, but they'd finished the scene. This kind of thing they did all the time. Of course, we were the closest collaborators, and that extended into the artistic side for me. There were times when I just couldn't decide on how to cast a particular actor, or a particular part. I hadn't found somebody I really liked, or there'd be various reasons why a part wasn't cast yet. And the time was coming when we had to make the movie. And sometimes Ismail just went off and cast the part. But he came back with people like Maggie Smith and people like that, so how could one, all you could do is say, wow, and yeah, I'm so glad. When we had a project, he always started out sending the project around to the studios, whatever it was. And usually it was turned down, though not always. And actually our connection to Hollywood is a little closer than people think. With our very, very first film, which was The Householder, by some miracle, and again it was because Ismail had met some people at Columbia, by some miracle we sold this Indian film, entirely shot in India with unknown actors. We sold that to Columbia Pictures, and they bought it for worldwide distribution. And we had two versions. We had a version in English, and we had a version that we'd made in Hindi. And Columbia sold that all over the world, and that was Hollywood. And then 2 films later, we made a film for 20th Century Fox, The Guru. It was our 3rd film in India, which was completely financed by Fox. And so there was back and forth, But on the whole, it's what he did. It's what he did as an independent producer, basically without involving Hollywood, that really counted. It's strangely, and this probably happens to a lot of people, I didn't really totally realize until Ismail was gone just what it was he had done, and just what all of how he had made it possible for me or for us to make our films, and the thousands and thousands of things over the years that he did that it would have been impossible for me. I would not have had the brains to, or the energy, or the daring, and all of that, to have done what he did. And it was only really after he was gone, and we then, we were finishing The White Countess. He died during that. We were finishing that, and then we made the next film, City of Your Final Destination. And I realized it was just the enormous difference of him not being there from when he was there. And not just on a personal level, because we were so close personally, but just on the creative and the artistic and the filmmaking level, and the what he did. And I can't say I've ever recovered from that, because right now I feel, though I can I'm certainly able to make films, it's not the same thing. It's without him. I mean, it's not. I don't know that if I wanted to make a film, I don't know that film would be made. When I was with Ismail, if I wanted to make something very badly and I could convince him that he wanted to do it, I knew it would be made. There was never any doubt in my mind that he would find a way, and he always did.